In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, me and my brother James Barlowe, we are going to talk about Alabama basketball. Alabama made its first Final Four in school history. Alabama is turning into a basketball school. Now, it will always be a football school, but the basketball program is definitely on the rise under Nate Oates. But James and I, we are going to debate about who is Alabama's best NBA prospect. We're talking about a team that I think has multiple guys that are going to play the NBA, but they could also not have anybody selected in the 2024 NBA draft. So stay tuned to hear our thoughts on Alabama's NBA prospect. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board. And my co-host for today is none other than my brother, James Barlowe. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Make sure you click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop a podcast, because we are your source for NBA draft content. Draft season is basically here. There's only 4 teams left. And after that, the pre-draft process starts. I've talked to several agents, and a lot of the pre-draft workouts are going to begin next week. So that's when all the draft rumors and who's shooting up and down and all of that and workouts, it's all coming up soon. If you missed the episode we did yesterday, we talked about Matas Buzelis calling out Zachary Risache in the pre-draft process. We talked about our thoughts on that and how it probably won't happen, not because Risache is scared, just because he has bigger things to worry about with this team still playing. But anyway, this episode is the third in a series where we're talking about the top NBA prospects playing in next week's Final Four in Arizona. We covered basically DJ Burns, the DJ Burns episode for North Carolina State. The last episode was pretty much the same thing. It was Zach Edey and Purdue, but this one is different. Alabama, like I mentioned in the open, has multiple guys, at least in my opinion, who I think will see time in the NBA, but I don't know if they have a clear-cut number one NBA prospect, so I'm going to put James on the hot seat early. In your opinion, who is the best prospect, NBA prospect, that is, on Alabama's roster?
You know, I'm still going to go with Grant Nelson. It's hard to overlook 6'10", 6'11", ball handling, some defense. I know the physicality was a little bit too much for him in the SEC for a while, but I feel like there's a place for him in the NBA. The shooting, obviously, he would need to definitely take that up a huge notch. I mentioned in the podcast earlier this year, it looked like he was shooting way too many threes. I know he shot like 15 one game, but he just has so much talent, man. And I know we preseason podcast we did. I think you had him in the lottery. I had him in the first round. I don't think he's a first round pick anymore, but I still feel like he's an NBA player, or at least an NBA talent. Whether he sticks, he's got some stuff he has to clean up. But like as a backup small ball 5 with his ball handling ability, he just has a lot of talent. He's a very good athlete. You saw what he did in North Carolina. We think Harrison Ingram, excuse me, is a very good defender, and
Easy to get them mixed up. Both went to Carolina.
Yeah, they feel like they're the same guy. But Harrison Ingram had no answer for him. Baycott, we knew he couldn't check him. So, but at the same time, the next game,
2 for
Grant,
4.
he was 2 for 4. He was in foul trouble. So the consistency is the reason why I feel like he's a second round pick. But I feel like he just has a lot of talent.
Yeah, a lot of talent. I wrote an article. It came out on Friday on NBABigBoard.com. If you are not subscribed, please check it out. And I just talked about the dilemma of Grant Nelson. I mean, saying he's a tease is like a really strong word in a sense, but he's one of the more unique guys really that I've ever seen in a sense, because if you like watch a highlight tape, and that's what blew him up. Like, he was a guy that came out of nowhere last year, like last January, a highlight tape was made for him. He all of a sudden like burst on the scene as an NBA prospect. But if you just watch his highlights, you see 6'11", you see ball handling. I mean, like for example, there was a play in the North Carolina game where he got the ball on the left wing. He hit him with a like an
In
in
and
and
out
out
crossover.
cross. He moves like a wing. He's not like super thin. Like he's got a nice frame on him. He's
Hmm.
athletic. He's bouncy. I mean, he makes like highlight reel plays, athletic finishes with both hands. Like there was a play in the North Carolina game. He got the ball on the right wing. I think he drove right and made a reverse up and under left hand layup. Then you see like post moves, not necessarily like posts, but you can see he can take advantage of smaller guards in a post. I've seen spin moves in the dunks. I mean, like you see like a package, a total package of offensive gifts. And then there's times where you watch and you're like, dang, he's
He
not
played.
tough. He's not
Yeah.
rebounding. He can't find his spots. But then you may watch another game of Hill Sky out of nowhere and grab a big rebound in traffic. I mean, we're also talking about a guy in the North Carolina game. You saw like the best of Grant Nelson. You saw inverted pick and rolls. You saw them have him
Mhm.
bring the ball up court, get a switch, post up. Was it Cormac? Was it Cormac Ryan or Woj? Whatever the guy. Post him up, score. You saw him beat guys off the dribble. You saw your 6'11" big as your ball handler late in games. Like you don't see that often. A guy that's 6'11", you trust him to bring the ball up and get fouled. He made free throws. I mean, you saw like what he could be. Then
Yes.
the next game, he wasn't foul trouble. You saw that. I think he got like a big rebound and then
Hmm.
someone just snatched it out of his hands. I mean, it's like a dilemma. So I don't know what to make of him. Like I see the talent and I still think he's a little raw in a sense. I know he was a late bloomer. I look at the good free throw shooting
75% for his career.
and I'm like, but it was like 80 something this season. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, the touch is there. He got to the line with confidence. The touch is there. I actually talked to an NBA scout, and I know people hate when I say that, but I mean, that's just what I do. So I talked
Talk
to an
to
NBA
him.
scout, and he said that Grant really shoots the ball well in practice. He's like, if you go to like a practice and watch him shoot, he's a much better shooter than the numbers indicate. And so he was trying to figure out like, all right, the free throw touch is good. You see him shooting workouts and it's good, but he was trying to figure out why is he not like making them at a respectable rate in games. Then I've talked to some that, especially like in January, there was one scout that was like, he made a mistake. He shouldn't have went to the SEC. And it's all in the article, so check it out, NBABigBoard.com. But this scout was like, he thought he should have went to Gonzaga. He thought he should have went to the ACC. Again, this was back in January. I mean, the ACC was had a pretty good showing in the NCAA tournament. But I,
Not Virginia.
well, yeah, we don't. But anyway, I just think people are just as torn as I am because the talent is there, and he didn't have a bad year. I mean, he averaged 11-5
On a deep team.
on a deep team, was efficient, shot 49% from the floor, but only 27% from three. Averaged a block a game, like 1.6 blocks. I mean, the talent is definitely there, but it's just something is missing.
Hey man, I just feel like you just gotta roll the dice on that talent. I feel like he's the best prospect. I mean, again, 6'10" guys that can handle the ball. They play in the NBA. I'm sorry. They play in the league. And he's got talent. He's athletic too. So it's not like he's just some, some chunky dude that can't move. Like he's an
No,
athlete. He
he
blocks shots.
he blocks shots,
He blocks
and
shots.
but again, I still can't get over the fact that with Mark Sears on their team, I'm sure we'll get to him later. When it
We
came
will.
down to crunch time, Nate Oates in Alabama said, "Give Grant Nelson the ball. We
With the
trust him
season on the
with the
line.
season on the line." And he was the one that they had bringing up the ball and shooting the clutch free throws. I can't name. I probably can't name five guys in the NBA at 6'11" who you want to have the ball in crunch time as your crunch time ball handler and foul shooter. That's the intrigue about Grant Nelson that makes him so much of a mystery. I could actually see a team taking him in the first round because I remember last year there was a scout that told me, "Hey, we don't have nobody on our team
That's
That's a
what I'm
big
saying.
that attacks the rim like that and that can make those athletic plays at the five.
I'm rolling the dice on his talent. Look, I know he was up and down, but like I said, 6'10" dudes with handles, they play in the NBA.
All right, when we return, we're going to talk a little bit more about Grant Nelson. I want to hear James's thoughts on where he would select him or where he's at in his big board or mock draft, and then we're going to talk about some other guys in Alabama, whether it's Rylen Griffen, Mark Sears, Jarin Stevenson. We're going to talk about Alabama. This team, like I said, has multiple NBA players. I think they could all return next year, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not Sears, and or maybe
We'll
not
figure it out.
Estrada, but they could have a lot of guys return, or you could see a situation where multiple guys try to test the NBA waters, and this draft is wide open. I don't even know what can happen. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Alabama prospects in the second segment. Stay tuned. But let's talk about Prize Picks, which is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. And it is the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You just pick more or less than 2 or more player stats, and you can watch the winnings roll in. And March is officially over, but the biggest moments in college sports tip off this month of April, that is. So you can be part of the action on Prize Picks for both men's and women's college basketball, plus the NBA playoffs are right around the corner. You can get in on the playoff action and win 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the NBA postseason. And the play-in tournament is what, April 16th, 17th, 19th. The playoffs at the 20th, April 20th, that is. And check this out. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into 1,000. That is an incredible flip. With basketball, hockey, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, again, America's #1 fantasy app. So go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. It has to be in lowercase letters, though. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy at prizepicks.com. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume because all they're doing is shouting and screaming and coming up with fake debates? Well, you can make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, which is a free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week streaming channel, which is programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we left off, and I was just talking about, I guess, rambling there about Alabama's prospects, how it's a unique team where there's, in my opinion, multiple guys that will play in the NBA, but there's a really good shot that nobody on this team will be drafted if they all declare for the draft this year. So a little bit more about Grant Nelson. Like, what range do you have him? Or, and I know you mentioned you think he's an NBA player. Would you select him in the first round if you were a general manager?
I don't think I'd take him in the first round just because he's just so hot and cold. I'm a big fan of talent, but he's just so inconsistent. So I would take him in the 40s, 50s. I can't see a situation where he comes out this year because he still has a COVID year too. But I can't see a situation where he comes out and he's not on an NBA roster at some level next year, is what I'm saying. So I think again, you said a scout said he shoots the ball well in practice. I mean, maybe there's a scenario where he, has a great workout. Again, we know he's gonna handle the ball. We know he's gonna be dunking everything, but maybe he turns the corner as a shooter in a workout, and that boosts his stock to, I don't know, maybe a late first round pick. But he's an NBA player, man. I don't know for how long, but he's definitely an NBA player.
Yeah, I might roll the dice with him as a first round pick. I mean, think of it this way. Really think of it this way. You bring him in for a workout and, you put him through athletic testing, bang,
Kill it.
dunking. You put him through ball handling drills with the guards,
Kill it.
and he's moving well. Then if he shoots the ball well, you're probably like, okay. And even though there's like 4 years sample size of him being a below 30% shooter from three, but if you look at, like I said, the foul shooting, and if he shoots the ball well in workouts, you may say maybe he just needs some confidence, or
Hey, as a
maybe
5, he doesn't have to shoot 36% from three either. You know
yeah,
what I'm
if he's
saying?
33, if he can just make you think twice, and
Because
then
if you close out on him,
yes, that's
he's
the way
gonna
I
make
look at it.
a play.
Like, all right, do I trust my developmental staff to where we can turn him into a reliable 3-point shooter? And then if the answer is yes, then I'm like, that opens up a lot, from him attacking closeouts to him being able to make the right read, somebody that you can give the ball
Inverted
to in the middle
pick
of the
and
floor.
roll.
I think he's a weapon. But to me, the concern is not the talent, is can he maximize the talent? Because when I watched him play at the combine last year, I thought he kind of struggled a little bit adjusting to like not being on the floor with guys where his athleticism wasn't just superior to everyone else's. Like, I thought he struggled playing against NBA caliber athletes. And then I also thought he struggled trying to like find how to impact games, because it's like he's so good at a bunch of things, but what is the one skill set that he can hang his hat on in the NBA? I think he needs a creative coach that will maximize his talent. But if you don't let him run inverted pick and rolls, if you don't let him do certain things, then like, what is he doing? Because he's not like an
Exactly.
elite rebounder, good
Right.
shot blocker, but I don't know if he's like, he has the tools to be a great defender, a really good defender. So it's
La-
kind of like it's tough.
Last thing about him before we get to the other guys, I remember the initial podcast we did about him. I told you that he reminded me of James Johnson and how it took, I don't know, 4 or 5 years for them to figure out who James Johnson was. And for some strange reason, I keep seeing Grant Nelson in Miami. Like they figure guys out. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And like maybe Alabama putting the ball in his hands, you have an idea of who he is, and it may not take as long as it took James Johnson to figure it out. But I've always picked up James Johnson vibes from Grant Nelson. Not a great
that's
shooter, but make enough shots. He can handle. You got a dynamic point guard. You want to take him off the ball. Like I feel like, yeah, he's like a James Johnson to me, but he may not be able to kick a can off the door.
yeah, it may
Like,
not be as tough. James
yeah,
Johnson had that extra factor where, you
yo,
heard Bam say he beat a teammate up because he
They
called him a
signed
B.
James Johnson after Giannis
Kept that ball.
kept that
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah. But that, it was crazy how like that could be that element that extended James Johnson's
Oh
career,
yeah,
the
he collected
toughness
some
that he
extra
brings to the
checks.
table. And I mentioned in that episode you talked about that. I remember I was working in the G League at the time, and James Johnson was playing for Rio Grande, and he was out the league after I know he was like a high first round pick. That's
16th
when I
pick.
was like, yep, that's when I saw like, whoa, this dude is playing point. He was playing 1 through 5, but it was like he does so many things well. He's so skilled. You didn't know like what was that one skill set, and it
Hmm.
just takes the right fit. And I think Grant Nelson in Miami would be very interesting. It's going to take a creative coach. So I honestly, if I'm a team and I feel like my coach is creative and thinks outside of the box, I'd use a first round pick on Grant Nelson because the draft is so uncertain. But I want to
I
talk about the guy who I think is Alabama's best long term NBA prospect. And he
mm.
had a big game, like a career game,
Oh,
Jarin Stevenson.
yes.
I think that he has a lot of potential. I even think that there is a team that may say, you know what? If we draft him now, we get him to come out now and draft him now, we may not be able to get him if he comes out a year later. He may blow up. 6'11, 210, had the game of his life against Clemson, 19 points, but he was what? I forgot how many. I know he
Five of
airballed.
8 from three.
He airballed 2 threes.
He
I know he
airballed
airballed his
one.
first one, but he was
His
7
shot
11
was
from the
like
floor.
Ryan Dunn far right. Hey, but the next one he let it go, and he was good from there.
Yeah, and I've actually seen him work out in person. I mentioned it in a previous podcast. He was here in Dallas last summer. Him and Gigi were working out. They were playing one-on-one. I got the video. If you didn't know who was who and just watched, you saw like the talent, the ball handling, the shot making. Hasn't really had a chance to really show everything that he has this year. And so I do think that there could be a team that says, hey, you know what? I think he's going to test the waters. I thought he was going to test the waters before this big game, but I think now with this big game, it just kind of makes sense for him to really test the waters.
And look, he has an opportunity to really, like force himself because he's gonna get minutes against Klingon. You gotta
Yep.
get Klingon out the paint, and the one way to get him out the paint is to have a stretch five out there.
Yeah.
So I think he has an opportunity to make some money for himself
And
for
he's
sure.
young, born in 2005, turned
Hey, what's that?
18 in October. So he classified up. So, or
Mm,
he moved up. So he started his freshman year, not necessarily the season, but he was 17 when school started. So he's only
okay.
18. So he's definitely young. But what's interesting about him is that he was born and raised in Chapel Hill.
How'd he get out of there?
I mean, obviously, they had Baycott coming back
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Baycott on the
and and,
staff.
and,
You want to talk about somebody who been the coaching staff? Nah, I'm just playing.
his mom went to North Carolina, but I don't know if he just didn't want to go there or not. But yeah, man, he's from North Carolina. But yeah, I like Stevenson. I think that he's probably their best long-term prospect. Like I said, I think that with that performance, and if he has another couple good games, I think he'll definitely test the waters. And then I also see like a team may say, all right, 18 years old, moves well, upside as a shooter. Somebody may say, man, if you stay in this draft, we're going to take you. But then the decision will be up to him. It's like, all right, do I stay and be maybe a second round pick, or do I go back to school? Because Alabama could either lose a bunch of guys or he could be the man.
Who knows with this transfer portal though, too.
Yeah. I mean, I know they're going to get some dudes in the transfer portal. I
Oh,
just
they
saw
got
Riley
dudes right
Kugel
now. They
went
got
to,
dudes right now waiting for the check to clear and that buzzer to go off, man.
yeah. Oh no, the coaching staff is probably calling guys at
Oh
halftime
yeah,
like,
for
"Hey man, you
sure.
see we up 6 right now."
Hey, did you see what homie from Illinois said Underwood? He
No.
was like, I got one coach preparing for the game plan for Connecticut, and I got two coaches in the portal, man. He said I'm stressed out.
Oh yeah, no. I've had one father tell me that he got a call like literally from a team at halftime. Like, you
Yeah.
watching our game? We need your son out here. So,
You
but no,
you imagine you saying 1, 2, 3 break, and you got that little time in between going, and you patting yourself
no,
on
no.
the
You got
phone
you
like,
got the GA. You got the GA. He already dialed the number. And he put the phone in coach's ear. Hey man, we need you. Yeah, you see me helping. All right, gotta go. All right. But anyway, yeah, Jarin Stevenson is a guy, like I said, I think could possibly be Alabama's best long-term prospect. All right, when we return, I want to talk about Rylen Griffen, a guy
yes.
that we've watched and seen grow over the years from back when he was in high school. And then Mark Sears, who has come out of nowhere. And I don't know why it didn't hit me, but I just thought about it. He was Jason Preston's backup at Ohio, goes to Alabama. He's from Alabama, has like crazy good senior year as far as with efficiency, obviously going to the Final Four. So we'll talk about Rylen Griffen and Mark Sears as NBA prospects. Stay tuned. All right, before we get into the last segment, I want to let you know that Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides you with access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the NCAA tournament, you are going to want to have a Fire TV, because Fire TV recently created the Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. And Fire TV lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, whether it's March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and more. Not to mention they have great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out the Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, go to amazon.com/locked on Fire TV. All right, last segment, Rylen Griffen. Rylen was Cason Wallace's teammate. Saw him playing a lot here in Dallas. I was looking at some film. I was looking at a film that I did. It was Drive Nation. I forgot what year it was. I guess obviously like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. They had Keontae George, Rylen Griffen, and Jordan Walsh all on the same team. That's a lot of talent on one AAU team. Talent. So tell me your thoughts on Rylen. I mean, you know him a little bit better than I do because you spend a lot of time like at the games and you do some training at Richardson High School where he went to. So what are your thoughts on Rylen?
Man, look, he's been able to shoot for a very long time. It was crazy. We were up there playing one night, and I think he was going into the 9th grade. It was a packed gym. And when I tell you, he tried to put this, I didn't do it probably like 20, but he tried to put this 20-year-old grown man on a poster, Rob. Yeah. He's been a great athlete for a very long time. Very good shooter. He has grown a lot since going to Alabama. I think my thing on him coming out of high school was he was kind of limited off the dribble, but he always could shoot. He had enough to get into his shot. He's becoming, and he really wasn't passing in high school. No disrespect, but it was easy for him. Now he's growing into more of what I think is a shooting guard. He's putting the ball. He still has some growth to do as far as handling the ball, but like he's shooting the ball. He's starting to make plays. I think he would definitely benefit from another year at Alabama. And ultimately, with his athleticism and his ability to shoot, he's got range. I think he's an NBA player probably next year, not so much this year. But like if he continues to develop his playmaking, ball handling off the dribble, I think he could really, really boost his stock in the 2025 draft.
I think so too. There's a scout that I know. He loves Rylen Griffen. Yeah. And he loved him last year. And he would text me about him just because he knows I have been following him for years. And I didn't see it. Right. I mean, even last year when Rylen averaged like 6 points a game, he was inefficient. Last year, his splits were 36, 30, 73. But there was this guy that loved Rylen Griffen. And then as Rylen kind of caught fire, he got off to a slow start this year, but then he went on this stretch where he was making everything. And he finished the season 45% from the floor, 39% from three, 82% from the foul line, nearly doubled his scoring average, or at least it's up like 5 points per game. He's trajecting or trending in the right direction. Yes. His trajectory it's on the right path. And I mean, obviously this guy is not a decision maker, but he is someone that, can talk to decision makers. But he tells me, he's been telling me since last year that you take Rylen with a first-round pick. He talks about the size, the positional size, the athleticism, and the shooting. My thing with Rylen is, unless you like really watch a bunch of Alabama games, you don't know how good of an athlete he is. Like his game is not based off of athleticism. He still has to figure out like the ball handling and the shot making to, I guess, showcase his athleticism more. Yeah. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that's like a 40-inch vertical, but you don't always see
and that's
athleticism.
That's probably my biggest issue with him. Like he is, I want to say unfortunately, but like in transition, you see the athleticism, but you don't get a lot of transition opportunities in basketball. I mean, this isn't, the 90s where we send it forward to the glass and then we just running after. But like he is, again, a tremendous athlete. Like I said, I've seen it firsthand. They threw a lob and I saw, like, I'm definitely not jumping with that. But like, and his high school, he was athletic in high school. and on the AAU circuit, but he just has some stuff to work on so he can show the complete package of athleticism. Like you said, like he really does have a 40-inch vertical,
Yeah.
like for real.
Yeah. I know he's bouncy. You just, like I said, you have to really watch a lot of games to see it. It's not like even with Grant Nelson, like you're going to see, even when he's not doing anything, you're going to see an athletic play
Yeah.
from him where you're like, okay. But you don't always see that with Rylen. All right, let's talk about Mark Sears. I've been talking about him a little bit more in the last few episodes after I had that apology. Led Alabama in scoring. I mean, 20 points, 21 points a game, 50% from the floor, 43% from three. He has had a magnificent year against Clemson. He had 23 points, 7 of 14 from three. I mean, he's shooting deep. He's good. Like
Yeah.
he is good. I think he's going to surprise some teams. The measurables and the NBA tools aren't really like sexy at 6'1", 185. He's not jumping out the gym. Maybe he can jump out the gym. His game just not based on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen the Jalen Brunson comparisons.
That's because they look alike.
Yeah, I do think naturally because they look alike, I do think that that's the first thing. But I also see like a crafty scorer who's not beating you with athleticism and speed. He's not blowing by you, left-handed,
Yeah.
and he can shoot. And so I get the comparison, but no, not like the footwork and all of that. No, I
Nah.
don't see that. But as far
But
as
to me,
like,
you can't be Jalen Brunson if you don't have the footwork and all of that stuff.
well,
But
like I thought Tyler Kolek has some Jalen Brunson in his game. More so how he's getting like like Jalen has mastered angles,
yeah.
like getting to the rim. It's not like pew, like blowing by you. It's not, but it's more so like angles and strength. Like, all right, if I can't beat you off the dribble, I'm gonna take this angle and I'm gonna get you on my shoulder. Now Kolek uses those angles to get downhill to create for others, while
Yeah.
Brunson uses his angles to get to his spots, to his
Yeah.
footwork. But that's where I have the comparison at. But tell me your thoughts on Mark Sears.
So I have him at 35% shooting off the dribble this year, which you're very good. 46% shooting and catch and shoot opportunities. I feel like I'm not gonna go Jalen Brunson. I mean, Jalen Brunson just had 61. I don't want to ever compare anybody to Jalen Brunson, but I see like Gabe Vincent, and I almost think that him playing in Alabama system this season with because Aaron Estrada is a co-point guard, right? And then Grant Nelson handles the ball too, so it's almost like we don't get to see him as a primary ball handler,
Yep.
right? And I think that may help him in a sense because he
Yeah, I
can
think
play
so
off of
too.
guys and
Yep.
he can shoot, but also may hurt him because he doesn't get a chance to show that he can play point guard in the SEC for a top 5 team or whatever. But I see like Gabe Vincent type where you pair him with one of these ball handling wings, Jimmy Butler or whatever, and he can play off of guys and be a great shooter. And not saying he's a 3-and-D point guard like who's the dude you're talking about? Devin Carter, but like he can play and create his own offense. You just don't want him to be like your full-time point guard. He'll guard point guards. Obviously, he can shoot the ball and he can create just enough. But I think he just reminds me of man, I hate they put that every time I see Gabe Vincent, I think of Shamar Moore in that Madea movie where
Oh
he had
yeah.
the nasty braids.
But
Yo, he got to change his whole style, man. But
no,
nah, I see
I
see Gabe Vincent from him.
that's an interesting comparison. I haven't seen that one, but I do think like there is room for a co-point guard, a guy that you can play with, a Jimmy Butler, a Luka,
Yes.
someone that is a big ball handler that can complement them and bring the ball up the court. And then if they need to bring the ball up the court and initiate the offense, someone that can space the floor, knock down open shots. So
We
I
see
see that. I like him. I like him a lot. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
because
Is
he's got a
he?
fifth. He's got a
Does
fifth
he?
year. Yeah, he
Oh
did
yeah,
two
that's
at
right. Because
Ohio.
everybody can return except Estrada.
Yeah,
So
he's the
Alabama
only one.
is.
Yep.
This is what makes everything so interesting because you can't say that there is a surefire first round pick on Alabama's roster.
Right.
And also, there's this whole NIL thing where they could be like, you're not a first round pick, but we can pay you more than you would make on a two-way.
And you got to think like, let's say they win it all, right? That NIL, whatever collective has to go up. So it's like, do you stay for that NIL bread or do you chase your dreams and try to go to the NBA?
Yeah, because I mean, a two-way is 500, and which is crazy that there are guys getting more than that. Like, I talked to a freshman that was all freshman, not on any draft boards, and I didn't talk to him directly, but I talked to someone connected to him, and they were like, "Yeah, he put his name in the portal because he thinks he's outplayed that 500 that he got."
I like that energy, man. I like that.
I mean, it's really this portal is
I
it's like
love
free
it. I know.
agency.
Hey,
It's
coaches
like,
don't like it, but who cares?
man, it's really a player option. That's what it is. You go to college
Yeah,
with a player
renegotiate.
option. And so with Alabama, I mean, you never know. I mean, their pitch could literally be, you're not a first round pick. Come back to school and we could pay you more than you would make on a two-way. And I mean, of course, in a two-way, if you're in a situation, and I'll use Gigi Jackson, for example, but he was on a two-way and then they had injuries. He ended up outplaying the two-way. He played the certain number of games where he had to be converted into a standard contract. Then he signed an extension. I mean, that's doesn't always happen, but there is a possibility that could happen. But for the most part, you can make more money in college basketball than you would on a two-way. And if you're on a two-way, a lot of guys are either not playing, you're sitting the bench in the NBA, or you're in the G League. And so it can be a decision. Do I take that situation, or do I stay in college, make more money, and I play in front of, crowds, and I can boost my draft stock? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But before we get into next year, I need a prediction on Alabama UConn.
Man, can't nobody beat UConn, man. Nobody can beat them. I'm sorry. They're too good, dude. Now you have to you got to score a bunch of points to even hang with them. And who they lose to? Marquette. I think they scored a bunch of points. Creighton got hot. Alabama can get hot.
They have
so if there is a team that can beat them, it's Alabama. They have the firepower to do it. I just don't think you can beat those dudes, man. That team is like their closest game is in the last 2 weeks has been 15.
Yeah, they've been smacking people.
Well,
speaking of UConn, that will be who we talk about in our next episode. Again, this is part 3, where we are covering the top NBA prospects on the Final Four teams. We did NC State, we did Purdue, we did Alabama, and now we are headed to UConn, which is the only team that I think has locks. Well, I should say, I think I'm almost certain has locks to be first round picks. I mean, they have 2 guys that I think are locks to be in the lottery. So this Final Four is definitely, it's just different. You got a team that's loaded with multiple lottery picks, and then you have 2 teams that may not even have anybody drafted.
UConn has the best of both worlds. They got young lottery talent and they got old heads too.
They got veterans and they got rings. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, it's Rafael with James. Stay tuned for the next episode where we are going to talk about the defending national champion UConn Huskies. We are